Yo, what's up, guys? We got a new one. This is from Daily Mail, I believe. We reacted to like one of their videos, but it says what attacking a trench in Ukraine is really like. So I'm more curious about what this video is about than anything else, and I just want to watch it with you guys. So real quick, a couple of things. Want to say thank you to the members. You guys are the shit. I love you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It means the world to me. Besides that, if you plan on coming to Ukraine or you're on your way to Ukraine, hit me up in my email, Telegram, fuck yeah, I've got all that shit, Signal, WhatsApp, or text me. I don't care. I've got my number, my email, all that shit pinned below. Hit me up before you just jump straight into the International Legion. They're going through a lot of changes right now, a lot of leadership changes, and really I just don't want to see you go to a unit where you're going to die in a couple of months, okay, if you're lucky. So, besides that, my name is Saxon. I go by Vegas here in Ukraine. I joined the International Legion for the defense of Ukraine, 1st Battalion, Charlie Company, 3rd Platoon in January of 2023. I'm no longer in Ukraine. I am with a different unit, which I'm going to be able to talk more about here very soon. I was just notified actually today that there's going to be kind of an announcement, and then I can talk about everything with you guys. So just bear with me. I know I haven't been able to say much. And I was working with the 13th Hatia, less so now, working, it's a little bit different. It'll make more sense when I can share everything. But let's jump into this. I want to watch this with you guys. Daily Mail, attacking a trench. Let's go.
What we're looking at here are Ukrainian soldiers attacking and clearing a Russian trench in the Serebyansky forest. These experienced soldiers are using well-drilled tactics to ensure their assault is a success. Trench combat is one of the most brutal aspects of battle, and it has become one of the defining features of the Ukraine war. But how exactly do troops attack a trench? And what is trench warfare like in the 21st century? We're going to examine this footage, study the tactics, see how the Ukrainians train, and speak to their instructors to find out. This is a typical Russian trench system, made up of a zigzag main trench, which makes it harder to attack, and various branches leading off to things like artillery positions, ammo stores, and advanced fighting positions. Every few feet are small dugouts where the Russian soldiers defending it can sleep or hide from bombardments. For the sake of this example, let's say there are 10 Russians in the trench. Approaching it are 20 Ukrainians who are going to attack and seize it.
3-to-1 ratio. If you're going to assault... Okay, what are we doing? If you're going to assault an entrenched position, you want to hit them with 3 times as many people as they have. That's NATO standard, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but it's 3-to-1 ratio. That never happens here in Ukraine. And frankly, you don't want to have that many people in a trench. But still, the more people, the better. You can have people watching the surrounding, watching the outside, waiting for the Russians to escape out the back or the rear, or, you know. Anyways, you never have that many people.
Every army does this slightly differently, but we're going to base this example on US tactics, because many Ukrainians will have been trained by US soldiers. The first thing the attackers will do...
Which is interesting because US soldiers have 0 experience in trench warfare. It's very skilled soldiers, don't get me wrong. I mean, everybody knows the United States military is the shit, but they have 0 experience in trench warfare and, frankly, in any kind of combat that's happening out here.
Split up. One squad of 10 men will stay here to provide what's called a base of fire. Their job is to keep an eye on what's happening in the trench and shoot any Russians who stick their heads up to keep their teammates safe. This is called cover.
I'm gonna fucking break this video apart, dude. So if you don't want me to continue to, if you get annoyed with me pausing it, you're one of like the 2 people that comment on my videos and say stop pausing it, get out, because I'm gonna tear this shit up. First of all, yes, great idea having overlapping fields of fire, but the bottom line is the entire time you are assaulting this trench, you are getting hit with FPVs, you're getting hit with dropper drones, you're getting hit with artillery and mortars. If you've got a bunch of guys sitting out there in the stationary positions providing overlapping fields of fire like that, they're going to get hit by indirect fire or direct FPV or drone fire.
Covering fire. The second squad will move towards the trench and, as it does so, will split again into 2 teams of 5. One team will hold back to provide more cover, while the other moves forward to the trench. The squad leader will pick an entry point, generally a place where the team can get close to the trench without exposing themselves to enemy fire, and direct his men toward it.
Hopefully you have these entry points picked out days, if not weeks, before you assault this position. You don't want to be trying to figure out on the fly where to enter, because you could run right into a trap, a mined area, a tripwire. You want to know where you're going. Plus, when you're down on the ground, for example, if you're doing all your mission planning based off of aerial or drone footage, when you're down on the ground, it's going to look completely different. So you could show up and be like, I have no idea where I'm at. So you'd want to have an entry point and all that stuff squared away and memorized before you get there.
With the help of their squad mates, this team is going to fight its way towards the trench, where 2 soldiers will crawl up to the entry point and toss grenades inside to clear out enemy troops. Once the grenades have gone off, the men will storm into the trench, advancing in opposite directions and firing as they go to clear out any remaining enemies. We can see the Ukrainian troops doing this. This is first-person footage captured by their fighters in the Serebiansky forest in eastern Ukraine back in July. They're attacking a Russian trench to stop Putin's soldiers from advancing through this area. We're following one of the teams that will breach the trench. It's just before dawn, the perfect time to mount a surprise attack so the enemy doesn't see you coming. The assault team moves into position, and the team leader uses a laser to designate.
This is that thermal crossover, that those like twilight hours where it's harder to be spotted on thermal heat signatures, are harder to pick out thermal sensors, the thermal imagers, because the ground is changing colors, right? It's not like, for example, the middle of the day when the ground has been cold for hours, and then you've just got like 10 bright white heat signatures moving across, right? The weather's changing, the sun's coming up or going down, whatever it is, and it's changing that thermal signature, hopefully to mask your thermal signature as well, or make it at least a little bit harder for those drones to see you.
Designate the trench entry point here. They throw grenades to clear the Russians out. Then they storm into the trench and open fire to make sure the area is secure. In the next step, the advancing soldiers fight their way to a corner or intersection where they stop. The team has now established a foothold that is clear of enemies and is ready.
Again, this seems like a perfectly viable option, what they're doing right now. What I've seen most often is people, where this turret is underneath me, this like laser gun they've got depicted down here, this is typically like an area that you would want to enter. Jumping in the middle of a trench system, there's a lot of variables, right? I guess it depends. I mean, the battlefield's dynamic, which we know, and this one, it's so dynamic, right? Maybe more than your average. So if that's the only way you can get into the trench, okay, whatever, you got to do what you got to do. But if you're planning this out, like I said, weeks in advance, days in advance, I would pick a spot where you know there's not going to be anybody behind you once you enter, right? So you jump in at this area where the turret is, obviously after taking that guy out. Then you know you're just moving forward, you're clearing the rest of the way forward. You're not going in and doing like this fucking swap maneuver, splitting, and that seems confusing.
Ready for phase 2, clearing the rest of the trench. This is going to follow a very similar pattern to breaching the trench. The attacking team forms a line, one soldier behind the other, all facing the same way because the other team are going to have their back each time they reach a corner or intersection between a clear section of the trench and a section held by...
Again, my opinion, I'm going to keep saying this, but that's entirely too many people to be in a trench assaulting the position. If they're all going to move together.
The enemy, they're going to stop and toss grenades. Once the grenades explode, they turn the corner and open fire, advancing down the trench and stopping only when they reach the next corner or intersection. Let's see the Ukrainian soldiers putting that into action. Here, the remaining team members are joining the breaching pair in the trench.
The breaching pair, yes, okay.
They regroup and then move to clear the first intersection. You can hear they're in constant communication with their comrades over the radio. Plus means roger or understood, while minus means negative or no.
Граната своя! +1!
Grenades are the first step, before the men move forward and open fire with rifles. It's hard to see exactly what's happening in the dark, but it appears there's one branch of the trench going to the left and a dugout to the right. In just a few meters, they encounter another dugout, firing into it and then tossing a grenade to clear it out. They're unsure whether the first grenade was effective, so they toss another. This detonates ammo inside the dugout, and a moment later, there's a flurry of activity and a hail of gunfire. The Russians defending this bit of the trench are eliminated, and it is now safe for the team to advance further. Members of the
They're obviously not going to show what really happens in that next part. We've seen this. I think this is an Azov team, but after that munition explodes, they creep up to clear it, and there's still a Russian kind of slumped down right at the entrance, still alive, and the dude just boom, 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 pumps 3 in his head.
Team rotate regularly, so whoever was at the front can grab more ammo or rest, making sure the whole team stays fresh and the attack keeps moving. To do this, the lead man hugs into the wall of the trench and allows his teammates to pass him before rejoining the line further back. This way, the team doesn't need to stop to reorganize. Speed is crucial to the attack because it gives the enemy less chance to get their bearings and organize a defense. At each corner or intersection, the attackers repeat the same sequence, tossing grenades, clearing, advancing, and rotating. This continues until the entire trench is clear. With the position secure, the next step is to regroup and prepare for an enemy counterattack, or withdraw back to base. With the dugout clear, the team moves forward. They're now going to repeat that same process. Grenades, rifle fire, move, secure, until the entire trench is clear. Surveillance drones keep track of their progress from the sky. Team members swap over. When the lead's gun jams, his teammate immediately takes up his position in the line. You can see them exchanging grenades, warning each other of obstacles, and covering each other's backs. When an ammo fire blocks their way, 2 men have to climb out of the trench to advance. This is dangerous because it exposes them to enemy fire, but their teammates cover them while they make their move. Once they are on the other side, more grenades and rifle fire clear the enemy dugouts. Soon, the entire trench is clear of Russians. The men radio their commander to tell him the job is done and then begin securing the trench against a possible counterattack. They check their ammo to make sure they have enough to withstand whatever Russia might throw back at them. This trench is now Ukrainian. The soldiers have used textbook tactics to stop Putin's men from advancing in this area. How did they learn this? We went to see new Ukrainian soldiers being trained for trench combat. We're here at an undisclosed location somewhere in the south of England to learn how one builds, defends, and attacks a trench network. These are new Ukrainian conscripts who have come to the UK for basic training. Today, they're rehearsing how to attack a trench. They only have 5 weeks to learn everything.
Okay, they said UK basic training or something. Let me read here.
About being a scout to attack a trench, who have come to the UK for basic training. Today, they're rehearsing how to attack a trench.
I think the idea of them learning Western military, of Ukrainians, new recruits learning a Western military boot camp is a great idea. Teaching these soldiers a Western military's way of clearing a trench, which they have not done since World War I, maybe World War II, I don't think is extremely effective. I say this because we've seen this time and time again out here in Ukraine, where they will send, the Ukrainian military will send a group or a unit of Ukrainian soldiers, typically infantrymen, out of country, Poland, Germany, somewhere in the UK, the US, and these nations are teaching the Ukrainians about combat that they have not been in, right? So it's kind of like the issue with some of the NATO standards and NATO standard approaches in combat that are not transferring over to this specific conflict, right? There's not a one-size-fits-all approach, even when it comes to trench clearing, right? Or especially when it comes to trench clearing. There's not like a, there oftentimes these Western militaries aren't taking into account all of the variables. I'm sure they take into account a lot of them. I mean, they're professional militaries, but like I said, they're not taking into account the fact that when you're about halfway through that trench, the Russians have radioed for backup, and that Russian commander decides to send artillery onto his friendly units in hopes of killing the Ukrainians as well. That's something they don't teach you, right? I've heard, actually, I was just talking with somebody. It was a Ukrainian commander that said the military sent him and his guys to Germany, and about halfway through the medical course that they were receiving, he said, "This is enough, we're going to leave," because none of it applied to the conflict here, right? And I could get more and more into depth with that, but it makes me grimace a little bit when I see new soldiers like this out of Ukraine, where they really need to be, learning shit that they probably don't need. Right? Like I said, I love the idea of boot camp, getting into good shape, Western military standards, physical training, fantastic, okay? But don't teach them shit they will never, ever, ever use here.
They only have 5 weeks to learn everything about being a soldier, so the tactics they're using here are basic. But you can still see how they use grenades to breach the trench, and how they move through in pairs, covering each other as they go. You can see how narrow the trenches are. It's a claustrophobic space with danger around every corner. They do a few dry runs just practicing the movements. Then they turn up the volume.
Go!
Helping them train are British experts in trench warfare like Sergeant Reynolds of the 1st Fusiliers.
See, they're moving in pairs, moving in groups of 2. That's more accurate. And to be fair, the way they're moving and it looks like the way they're training them is pretty accurate to the way I see some higher level Ukrainian assault troops operate in the trenches. This looks much more realistic than some of the other training that I've seen them use or some of the training that I've seen them give the Ukrainians that will never translate to this conflict. This seems pretty good.
I wanted to know how the British would attack a trench.
Before we even launch onto the trench, we want to get as much information on the trench itself, obviously positions, etc., the layout. That would have been filtered down to the smaller units, like I said, who's going to be launching onto it. Then they're coming up with their own plan, etc., on what they need to aid them in taking this trench. Now that they've came up with a plan, they found a decent area where they're going to set up their assembly area, okay, FUP, form up point. So predominantly it would be in a wood block just off to the flank, okay, and then they're picking a point that's vulnerable within the trench itself, so that's either where there's limited manpower, if the defences aren't up to standard, of the rest of the trench. So if one area is more defended than the other. In the ideal world, they would start softening up targets, all right, so using sharpshooters, snipers to take out key personnel in there, people on stag, sentry, etc. Then the artillery, so the use of combined arms, all right. And then once they're happy, they would start launching onto it in small teams, maybe 2s, 4s, etc. Okay, so they don't have a full advancing wave of people just coming towards their trench like how you would have seen in World War One. Okay, so we're launching less people at the trench, okay, to save manpower. They would get broken down into their assault pairs, assault pair 1, assault pair 2. When they're approaching the trench, in an ideal world, they want to stay out of the sight of the apertures, okay, because if they're out of sight of the apertures, they can't be engaged, they're in a safe position. They've approached the bunker position that they have seen is the weakest, all right, and then they're just going to use a lot of grenades, okay, especially out in Ukraine. They say the more grenades you have, the higher the chance of winning. So they're grenading it as much as possible, okay, and then once they're happy that the bunker is clear or that section of the trench is clear, then that's when they're physically going to make entrance into it.
Once we're into the trench, what happens then?
Okay, so as we start making our way through the trench, we know the trench layout, obviously due to the reconnaissance from the drones, the aerial footage, etc. All right, so we know the layout, we know which ways we need to go, which way we need to fight, hold, etc. And we're just trying to clear the trench in a logical sequence so it prevents fracticide. So for example, if I'm not going down there, okay, and then there's still enemy that needs to be cleared in there, they're not coming up behind me and engaging me, and then if I'm trying to engage them, there's people not here that's trying to engage them. So we're just trying to prevent that blue and blue and the enemy reinserting behind us. Ideally, you want to clear it in a sequence where it's nice and methodical and logical, okay, so you're picking out strong points where you're like, that position needs to be defeated first before I approach on and push onto the rest of the trench.
What happens when you reach a strong point, like a bunker?
Obviously, weapon systems are up, trained, ready to react to enemy that's going to potentially present themselves, and a lot of grenades. Like I said, bunkers are heavily defended positions. Within there could be bunkers within bunkers, okay? There could be grenade sumps, everything. So therefore, you need to have a lot of grenades in there, okay? And you're going to be clearing it by fire. The reason why we clear it by fire, especially in trenches, there's not going to be any civilian population, so you're able to clear it by fire. You know, if you're clearing a position, you are the most forward person. Yeah. Okay, so you're able to go in there and clear it by fire. So a grenade sump is basically where a grenade gets thrown into a bunker, say, and it's just a small little hole where it captures the grenade. All right, I'm not talking like a golf hole. All right, they're pretty big. You're able to quickly, within a couple of seconds, push a grenade into there, and that will take most of the fragmentation.
And what about clearing corners?
So corners, that could be the difference between life and death. If you just waltz past it like we did, then you're most probably going to end up dying. But if you're taking the corner with high levels of skills and drills where you're doing what you've been taught, then the most likelihood of you surviving it is tenfold. Again, it's the exact same as the bunkers, lots of grenades, cleared by fire. It's pretty much the exact same. The main threat within the bunker is not within the bunker itself, it's from the drones, basically the FPV drones or the bomblet drones, the droplet drones, sorry.
How many people are involved in the attack?
So you want to keep it relatively quite small because, like I said, trenches can be quite dangerous from up above, and as you can see, it's quite a confined space. So as soon as you do get a grenade in here, it's going to be quite difficult to maneuver out. So that's why I'd roughly say having a fire team section max. So a fire team, that's roughly between 3 and 4, and then a section is anywhere between 6 to 8. But you want to make sure that you're rotating people out, so the percentage of them dying is sort of limited. As rough as it sounds, you share it in a way, because obviously every time that it's the same geezer that's coming around the corner, then you know at some point he's going to take it. Yeah. And you just want to spread out the love, more or less.
If that's how you attack a trench, then how do you defend one? And why build one in the first place?
To dig a trench, like I said, you need somewhere where you can...
Again, this guy seems like he knows for sure what he's talking about, man. I think he mentioned the drones, he mentioned the artillery a little bit. He's sending in smaller groups. I think this guy's pretty spot on. If it were me and I was a trainer in this specific environment, I would be putting like branches like jammed in the like horizontally. Can we chill, guys? Fucking working, huh? Horizontally jammed in between the trenches, the walls. So while they're moving, especially, you know, in two-man teams, they have to concentrate over stepping over objects, whether it's bodies like in the field or debris, trash, bottles and boxes full of piss and shit, you know, practicing stepping over this and keeping their line of sight forward and watching their front. But this seems pretty spot on. Even the way that they have these designed, you know, we've seen it to where some Western military training will design a trench and it's just like a straight horizontal line. That's it. Like, that's not how the Russians build trenches. It's much more similar to this, with like bunkers, like that bundage over there in the corner, that covered bunker. This is pretty realistic.
Basically defend the location to stop the enemy from taking that ground, and digging trenches is most probably the cheapest way of conducting that. So basically with trenches, you've got the protection, you've got everything. It's linking villages to towns to cities, etc., back to command, and this is simply the cheapest way of doing it, because a couple of bits of timber and some metal doesn't cost a lot compared to trying to put massive fortifications in there. And obviously it's quite low to the ground, you don't want to stay up high, and you can fit a lot of troops in here to cover that ground to make it more defended than others. As we come into the actual trench itself, you can see that we've got the sandbags on the walls, all right, you've got the boards to reinforce it so it's not caving in on itself. You've got the 6-foot pickets which are supporting those boards, all right, and then underneath that you would have wire running out to smaller pickets to, again, offer support so it's not caving in from potential artillery fire, IDF, etc., and just day-to-day use when people's climbing in and out of the trench.
How does a trench actually get dug?
Through a lot of blood, sweat and tears, to be honest. A lot of sleepless nights. Obviously, if you want to defend an area, you want to defend it fairly quickly. Okay, so it means a lot of work, a lot of shovels, picks, etc., entrenching tools. If you have the luxury of excavators, then get them in and they do pretty much half a job. No. And then all you've got to do is just do all the reinforcements. I'd say a decent sized trench like this, you're looking at, if you've got, say, a platoon, a week max, I'd say.
Once you've built your trench, you have to defend it.
So as you can see coming through the corridors, you've got more corridors that would split off into other defensive locations where the bunkers are situated. Predominantly, you've got a field view of fire. Okay, so there's nothing in front of them because it would be pretty redundant placing a bunker behind a hill. Put it either in front of the hill or just to the side of the hill, etc. And to cover dead ground where you can't see on the other side of, say, a bit of grass, so you would flatten the grass, put a bunker there so you can observe out. Okay, but as you come into the bunker, it's relatively quite small. You're not going to be conducting any admin in this bunker. All right, this is just solely going to be for defending the area. As you can see, you've got the reinforced ceiling, the reinforced walls, all right, to prevent it collapsing from any enemy indirect fire. Here you've got the sandbags which create a...
I mean, to be clear, this is a nice trench system. So nice that this would be considered like a Gucci trench here in Ukraine. Russian or Ukrainian, unless you're pushing into like a major city, like when when Ukraine moved into Kursk. Kursk had some crazy trenches, like with huge cement pillboxes. They had lighting ran through the entire bunker system. They had bunk beds. I mean, they had real steel overhead cover. I mean, those were nice, but that was just outside of a city. They were, before the war, were kilometers away from any real danger, so they were able to really fortify these positions. But something like this, you're not going to see on the front of the zero line. I mean, nobody's got the time to put on fucking planks of wood like that without getting hit by a drone.
A firing platform, all right, so the soldiers can rest their weapon systems, all right, and get decent aim shots off at the enemy. On the sides and to my front here, you've got the apertures. That's obviously where the weapon systems are going to be pointing and they're going to be able to engage the enemy that's approaching. All right, and then, like I said, out to the front, you would have other bits of defences, i.e. claymores, etc. For a defensive location, okay, predominantly, me personally, I would have machine guns, okay, because it's a lot of firepower compared to the standard AK variants. But obviously not everybody's going to be able to have a machine gun, so therefore you just need to sort of mix it up with PKMs, AK variants, like I said, and some sharpshooters, sniper rifles, etc.
The British are also training Ukrainian veterans to become instructors themselves.
Мене звуть Олександр. В армії я служу з 20-го року. В одній з найпотужніших механізованих бригад Збройних сил України. Ну, по-перше, в перший день я знаходився на кордоні з Російською Федерацією, бо ми вже знали конкретно, що буде війна. Почуття були такі якісь змішані, незрозумілі. І в перший же день було боєзіткнення, і я отримав поранення. Але ми тоді перемогли. Це було за декілька кілометрів від державного кордону. Ми зустрічали російську танкову колону, яка прямувала до Харкова. І прийняли перший бій. На нас вийшов російський головний дозор. Ми встроїли йому засідку, знищили їх. І під час бою прийшлося пересуватись по відкритій місцевості і отримав наскрізне кульове поранення в праве стегно. Так, після поранення зразу повернувся до своїх побратимів. Потім ми відвоювали Харківщину в 22-му році. Пішли в контрнаступ, звільнили
Kupiansk. Kupiansk is where I was.
Куп'янськ, Ізюм, Шевченково. І наскільки змогли продвинутись до межі Харківської і Луганської області, дійшли туди, а потім вже потрапив під Бахмут. Розумієте, коли бачиш першого вбитого росіянина, особливо як це росіянин вбитий власноруч в бою, зникають почуття, з'являється таке, як кураж. Тобто ти не розумієш, що ти робиш, як ти робиш, де ти знаходишся. Все настільки швидко там все відбувається, що потім, коли ти виходиш з бою, ти дивишся, швидко там все відбувається.
Stacking up outside of a trench like this is a gold mine for dropper drone or FPV. I mean, they're looking for this right here. Now, you're not going to see any Ukrainian units at middle tier level or higher stacking like this. You're not going to see people stacking at all in this conflict, even in buildings. In my opinion, I mean, maybe when they first initially approach and they get onto like an urban, some kind of a house or a factory wall or something like that. But nobody's doing like SWAT fucking Navy SEAL style breach and enter. Really, those kinds of tactics are going to be most effective when it's the enemy doesn't know you're coming in, right? And then you could breach, shock and awe. Everybody's got their corners, but no. CQB in this conflict means level the fucking building with grenades and anti-tank launchers, anti-personnel launchers, fucking mines, whatever you have, rocks. Do everything you can before you got to go into that building.
Настільки швидко там все відбувається, що потім, коли ти виходиш з бою, ти дивуєшся сам себе, що ти міг в цьому бою загинути раз 15. Але ми не маємо права на те, щоб загинути, бо ми боронимо свою державу.
This is a Ukrainian conscript taking part in the training on what turns out to be a special day for him.
Так, мене звати Андрій. Я не маю позивного, тому що ще його не заслужив. Я солдат. Сьогодні мені виповнилося 40 років. Саме сьогодні.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Я був банківським співробітником з 16-річним стажем у сфері ризик-менеджменту. Я не маю військового досвіду і став до лав ЗСУ тільки у вересні цього року. Я відчуваю тривогу, як, мабуть, будь-яка адекватна людина, є деякий страх, але я думаю, що я зможу перетворити цей страх на свої якісні якісь показники в плані бути більш обережним, обачним. Якось так.
Before we go, is there anything they'd like to say to the Russians?
Я думав про це питання і представляв собі це, що я буду кричати в спину утікаючому російському воїну, про те, що український народ ніколи не забуде те, що вони створили. Він ніколи не простить відсутність, те, що вони забрали у українських дітей дитинство, а у наших батьків їх спокійну старість.
На перший погляд це легке запитання, але воно не є легким. Я бачив на власні очі масові захоронення дітей, жінок. Це те, що робили росіяни. І я б їм нічого не сказав. І я буду боронити свою країну до останнього.
What did he say?
Їм нічого не сказав. І я буду
He said he would not want to say anything to them.
боронити свою країну до останнього. І нічого їм навіть не скажу. Буду вбивати їх до тих пір, поки вони будуть знаходитись на моїй землі.
That's where this tape stops. But we'll be back soon to play you through another piece of War on Tape.
Shit, man, that gets heavy when they start talking like that shit. But it's the truth, dude. I mean, this conflict is deep, man. I mean, the hatred for the Russians runs deep, 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 deep. And it's not the Russian people. Ukrainians don't hate Russian people. They hate the Russians who are aware of Putin's plans and are siding with Putin to try to take their land from them, right? That was a really cool video, dude. It's kind of cool to be able to break some of that down. And again, just share my opinion. I'm no professional fucking trench assaulter. Every operation I was on was a defensive mission, right? So I never jumped into any trenches myself personally on an assault and cleared and stuff like that. But I've seen it happen enough out here, right? And we've trained it enough out here that there's certain things that I just know there's that you wouldn't do out here because it would mean a very quick ticket to death or injury. So anyways, that was badass. Please do me a favor, like, share, subscribe. Let's blow this fucking channel up. I need your guys' help. Shout out to the members again. Thank you guys. It means a lot. I love you. I'll see you guys in the next video.